Good evening. This is a personal message to Member of Parliament Pierre Poilievre. I've been listening to the radio after Tony Clement's announcement about what's going to be happening or what the government hopes to do with respect to civil servants, and I've also listened in the past months about other conversations about what needs to change. And I'm not saying there doesn't need to be change. I'm just saying that there are some things in the conversation that concern me. One of them is we're going to put an end to these people who go on long-term disability, come back to work, and then go on long-term disability. We're going to put an end to that. Some of the conversations I've been hearing seem to imply that everybody who does that is just taking advantage of the system, and none of those people actually have an illness. Well, I don't know if any of the people who are suggesting we get rid of these long-term disability people have consulted doctors. I've talked to people who are victims of harassment in the federal government civil service, and I've talked to doctors who treat them. There are a lot of them out there, and is evidence in the public news, people who've killed themselves while working in the federal civil service and found out, people find out, oh, the reason they did it was they were under stress and they couldn't take it and they killed themselves. So there's a lot of evidence to suggest there are some serious concerns that need to be addressed. Now, I'm also aware that it's very difficult to have somebody investigating a harassment complaint and find the person who did the harassing, we'll say guilty in quotes, because I'm not sure what the proper term is. And even when they are found guilty, the person who was harassed doesn't necessarily get compensated, and the person who was the harasser continues to work in the federal civil service. So I would suggest, as a simple change that I'd like to see, anybody found guilty of harassment is immediately terminated from the civil service. We don't need people like that there, and it's difficult to find them guilty in the first place, but when they're found guilty, they should be gone. End of story. That should do two things. It should reduce the people who are considering harassing somebody because they realize, doing this could cost me my job. And secondly, you need to get the investigation process properly funded, properly staffed. I've talked to a number of people whose harassment investigations don't start for many, many months past the supposed 6-month by the paperwork anyway. It's supposed to be concluded in 6 months from the point in time the harassment paperwork is filled out and submitted. It's supposed to be all wrapped up in 6 months. I know of cases that go well beyond 3, 4, 5 years. So that needs to be cleaned up. And if you did that in conjunction with all the other things the federal government wants to do with respect to the civil service changes, I'd be kind of, at least somewhat supportive. But what I've been hearing so far doesn't seem to be addressing the real concerns that I have about what's going on in the civil service. Because if the civil servants are taking sick time because they're being harassed, somebody else is doing the job and doesn't do it as well as the person who normally does it. And that is something that causes the service to the Canadians that Tony Clement's all worried about, serving Canadians. Well, if you got a bunch of people who are substituting for somebody else because the normal person is off sick and can't deal with the harassment, then there's a problem. So I'd like you to look into that. I'd like to hear a reply from you. You can go ahead, post your own YouTube video. I'm sure there's a lot of your constituents who'd love to hear what you have to say about this. Thank you very much, and good night.